Tond, Book 1, The Sons of Clan Rosser Celtis, by Stephen E. Scribner, read by the author. Chapter 1, The Lore Room at Night. This begins with a proverb in the Fyorian language, Erkandas ka ilda, sellarn ilin inyas keveralis mirenyas, which translates into English as, even the most heroic tale begins with a single, humble sentence. The setting, Goa Eyuhand in South Rohandal, 8th month, Fyorian year 607. A small flickering light appeared in the dark room. Roland Rasserkeltis, age 11, sat up on his mattress, looked around him. It was Arnold, his dark-haired younger brother, holding a candle. What time is it? Why are you up so late? Roland asked. It's a little after sundown. I stayed up. I didn't drink my Nemarath tea tonight. Easier to stay awake. Come on, I have something to show you. After sundown? Inside, of course. Ever wondered what Keldar does in that room downstairs? Look, I hid this. From under the folds of his nightrobe he produced a gold-colored key. Roland laughed. Silly. Keldar will miss it. He goes down in that room every night. He has 4 of them. He often loses one. You didn't hear him at dinner tonight? Now where is that key? He asked. I thought it was here, but I'm always mislaying things. Must be getting old, he said. Now come on, let's go. Go where? You know, stupid. What's the key for? The lore room, of course. Roland got off his mattress, slipped on his nightrobe, and padded out of the room behind Arnold. You always get us in trouble, he muttered, half to himself, as they passed the door to Arnold's bedroom and then through the gently sloping rounded hall to the stairway. The stairs led to the rooms underground, where they spent much of their days out of the burning heat of the desert sun. There were a lot of rooms and some whole dwellings underground in Goa Eyuhand. Rumor had it that if you knew where to look, you could find whole systems of interconnected tunnels and secret passageways. But Roland and Arnold had never found any. But at least one room had always remained secret. This very room, the lore room, which they stood in front of now. Arnold slipped the key into the keyhole, and the massive wooden door opened inward, as if by itself. Nothing could be seen inside, but Arnold slipped in confidently. Roland followed into the darkness, as the door shut behind them with a muffled thwomp. It certainly was dark. Even Arnold's candle seemed dull in the stillness and the heavy air, and the flickering light did not reach the ceiling, or perhaps the ceiling was painted darkest black. In the dimness, Roland could barely make out a large cabinet, plain and undecorated, with some space behind it for the curve where the floor met the wall. A bookshelf, also plain and undecorated, half full of old tattered books scattered at odd angles, and a plain table covered with all manner of curious objects apparently made of metal and glass. Knives, goblets, rings, crystals, and some things he couldn't name. Oh, you should be in here? What if Keldar comes in? He whispered. Keldar's asleep, said Arnold. Now see these things on the table? Here. He moved over to the table, set the candle down on it, a little too close to one of the crystals, Roland thought, and picked up one of the objects, a metal ball. Keldar calls these things mechanas. They're left over from the ancients, he says, from before the devastation. Here. He handed the ball to Roland. Roland almost laughed. Some of the things were certainly mysterious. This ball, however, was not. This is for playing 10-ball. If you wanted to come in here and risk getting us in big trouble just to play a game of 10-ball, see the holes? Of course, silly, the thumb hole and 2 finger holes. I thought Keldar showed you how to play. Put your thumb in the thumb hole. Roland did, noticing that there was a Fyorian word open scratched on the metal ball beside the hole. Before he could wonder what it meant, a searing, eye-numbing light poured out of the ball, filling the room with clarity, rainbows, and shadows. Roland cried out and dropped the ball, and it rolled into the corner. The shadows danced crazily. Arnold giggled. It's a glow ball, better than the candle. He retrieved the ball from its corner. Roland's sight was returning. The light was not actually so bright. It had merely seemed so because he'd been looking directly at it when it started. Arnold turned the glowing ball around in his hand. The other 2 holes, one is for suspending it. Here. He put his finger in one of the holes and held the ball up above his head, and let go, dropping his hand. The ball remained in the air above his head. Pull it down. Roland reached up and gave the ball a yank. It stubbornly remained in the middle of the air as if held there by an invisible solid object. When he let go, it bounced and rolled a couple of inches across its invisible floor. Roland reached up again and slapped it. It bounced again and rolled into the corner, but now above their heads. "You can use the light to read, but it stays out of your way," he commented. "I came in here last night. I tried it. The other hole stops the light, closes it," says Keldar. "Here." He put his hand up to retrieve the ball again and froze. From outside of the room there came the muffled sound of footsteps. "Keldar, he must have heard you yell when you opened the light. Quick, behind the cabinet." And in one motion he grabbed the ball, replaced it on the table, snuffed out the candle with his fingers, stopped the light from the ball, and apparently jumped behind the cabinet in the dark, leaving Roland to feel around blindly. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped, and another light, this time a shaft of whiteness, split up in the dark. Roland saw the location of the cabinet and dived toward it, feeling Arnold's hands drag him back behind. There was the thump of the door closing as the light went out, and then the sound of Keldar's raspy breathing in the room. And then silence. And another spate of raspy breath, this time sniffing. And another silence. Roland could feel Arnold's hot breath down his back. Another light appeared, a glow ball from the dancing shadows it cast. Then the shadow stopped moving. Keldar had suspended it in a corner. Silence again. Roland could feel his heart pounding. Then, almost imperceptibly, Keldar muttered to himself and chuckled. A small scraping sound, and the light went out. Silence again. A long, deep, dreadful silence, and darkness. Roland felt his sweat running down his face, though it was cold. He was not ready for what happened next. Keldar's voice, now loud and powerful, speaking nonsense. "Dromitikava mikava ahikala!" And a blast of light, much more intense than the glow ball. When Roland's eyes readjusted, he saw that the room was now filled with the yellow flicker of firelight. Arnold's green eyes were filled with terror. "He started a fire in the middle of the room. He's going to burn us up or smother us with the smoke." "I don't smell any smoke," said Roland, truthfully enough. And at that moment, Roland felt something awaken deep inside of him. Something he could barely name and scarcely control. He just knew that he absolutely had to see what Keldar was doing, no matter what the danger. He cautiously peered out from behind the cabinet while trying to bat away Arnold's attempts to pull him back. Keldar the old man was seated on the floor with his back towards Roland, facing a blaze in the middle of the room. Really in the middle of the room. It seemed to be contained in a rectangular space, starting a little more than a foot above the floor, and reaching to about a foot below the black ceiling, without changing or diminishing in intensity. No coals or embers were visible. As Roland watched, its center part changed into many colors, and then formed the scene of the desert with the half-moon above. This could be a scene of very near their home. "Get back behind, you fool!" Arnold whispered, quite loudly, and Roland felt clammy hands on his shoulders. He squirmed free. Keldar turned around with a sharp glance right at the cabinet. Roland withdrew just in time. "Stay here," whispered Arnold. Reflections and shadows moved across the wall behind Roland. For a moment he hardly dared to move, and then slowly, quietly, he peeked out again, fighting Arnold's protests. Keldar was facing the flame again, and the scene of the desert was moving, speeding past as though they were on a horse. It stopped momentarily at an eyuhan, that's an oasis, with quite a number of houses, and then proceeded to another that was surrounded by fields of towering anila edible cactus, a staple food for the Fyorians. Then faster again, now passing through several more oases, and abruptly into a grassland. A few more farms were visible in the moonlight, but now the scene was moving so quickly that Roland could not see details. There were mountains in the distance, visible as vague shadows, and apparently the scene was moving toward them. Suddenly it was over them, and Roland momentarily was gazing down into a deep, snowy crevasse, and the mountains were behind, and the moon vanished behind the cover of clouds, just before a second range of mountains appeared and was hidden in the dark. Darkness and flame, an odd idea, Roland thought. For a moment the image was blank, and then an eerie greenish light illuminated the scene of mountains again. The scene was now moving quite slowly, about the speed of a man walking. Roland could see bizarrely shaped outcroppings of rock, twisted and bent, and old gnarled trees with branches like twisted, diseased arms. A strange creature appeared, seemingly made of body parts of several different animals, a scaly, fish-like body, a bird's head with a long, spiny lower mandible and no feathers, and arms that appeared almost like the branches of trees. It padded along on thin, muscular legs, shaped rather like those of an insect. It gleamed metallically in the strange light. Was it wearing some kind of armor? And seemed to be carrying something on its back. The scene followed along for a moment, and then the creature turned and stared right at Keldar and Roland. Its eyes were small and black, and it spat something red. Roland ducked, expecting to get hit with venom. Surely the creature was poisonous, but the red goo fell to the ground in front of it. This was, of course, only an image of the creature, and it couldn't have hit them. The venom had been aimed at something else, apparently, and Roland began to feel frustrated that Keldar wouldn't show him what. Keldar certainly was controlling the scene. But then the creature turned and strode away jerkily. A shooting star appeared overhead. The image tumbled headlong toward it, ignoring the hybrid creature. Roland saw the trees and rocks and mountains in the distance spin dizzily. The scene went blank again. A face appeared in the flame, a Fyorian man with a long, bushy, blond beard. The light was normal again, and the man looked directly at Keldar. The man spoke. "Keldar Ras Alinar, pleased to see you." "And you, Elan Kuntananas," replied Keldar. "But I have just seen—" The man in the fire cut him off, but his face was smiling. "Before you tell me, there is—" Keldar laughed loudly and mumbled something inaudible. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence, followed by more whispered words. Surely they were talking about Roland. What could he do now? He couldn't just disappear back behind the cabinet. He'd been seen. The image in the fire obviously did go both directions. Arnold had stopped clawing at him. In fact, Arnold was staring at him with such wide eyes and open mouth that he was almost fish-like. The expression would have been hilarious if he were not so frightened himself. "So I'll bring it up at the next council of Ahinor," Keldar was saying, in a normal voice again. A grantagshk. His pronunciation of the word was bizarre, with all the consonants and a jumble at the end, clearly enunciated. A grantagshk that knew we were watching it, and a fly fire in Borog. Who could possibly have a mechana for a fly fire in Borog? Anyway, I'll worry about it later. And now for the little spy! He turned around and glared right at Roland with his narrow dark eyes, and at the same time the glow ball in the corner lit up and rebounded through the air and came to rest about an inch from Roland's nose. Roland withdrew, only to crash into Arnold, who had apparently slipped while trying to squeeze out from the other side, although the bookshelf was blocking his escape. He stuck his elbow in Arnold's eye. Arnold swore and lunged at him, and they both tumbled out onto the floor. Keldar guffawed. "Well, there are two of you. Surprise, surprise." His intonation indicated that he was not surprised at all. Roland stood up and brushed off his night cloak. "I'm sorry, I've been spying. I hope you're not angry. It was all so interesting. The fire and the mountains and the glow ball." Arnold was groveling on the ground in pure terror. "Oh, please don't put the fire on me. I'll never do it again. I'll never spy on you." "Arnold, you fool," growled Keldar. "If you can't trust an old man any more than that, you should have gone into oblivion with your father. Now grow up." The man in the fire chuckled. "Even if I wanted to kill you with a lore fire, I couldn't," continued Keldar. "I could not make the mechanas harm a man or a woman or a child. Now stand up like your brother." Arnold stopped shaking and rose to his knees slowly. "Now the truth of the matter is," Keldar continued, "spying is not good, and it shall not go unpunished. And you certainly could have done it better than you did. You both made enough noise to wake up everyone in Eyuhand. But actually I've been waiting to catch one or both of you in here. I've always seen you two as a couple of promising Ahinor. You, Roland, because of your curiosity, and you, Arnold, because you're good with words. It was probably you who persuaded Roland to come down here. So I decided to give you a show when I knew you were here. You've seen the fiery eye, a product of the mechana that your father, or his friend, discovered. And this," he indicated the man in the fire, "is Elan Kuntananas, Ahinor of Sayar Eyuhand in the east, near the Shirvanya lands." "Pleased to meet you," said the man, and he winked. But pleased to meet you too," stuttered Roland. Arnold said nothing.